Good morning, everyone, and welcome to On the Wrong Lead presents Saratoga Daily. I am Mark, and we're taking a look at the August 16th Saratoga card. We're going to take a look at a little bit of the late sequence here, which I thought was pretty solid. I actually think the late pick 4 and late pick 5 are very attackable for people who don't have a huge budget, and they're really fun sequences. Yeah, let's talk a little bit about what happened yesterday. Obviously, Swiss Skydiver stamped herself as an absolute monster. She was just as impressive could be. My questions of the distance proved pretty unfounded. It looks like she's just one of those California Chrome types who distance just doesn't really matter, and the pedigree, just toss the pedigree when you're talking about distance with that one. Just very impressive. And and if you were tailing either the pick 3 or the pick 4 structure that I gave out, you were feeling pretty good going into the last leg. You had the favorite and you had a couple of prices. I do need to eat a little bit of crow on that one though, because we got nailed at the wire by a 26-1 shot. And after the fact, I was talking with Chase, and Chase brought out the fact that historically at Saratoga, at a mile on the inner turf, the 1 and 2 posts are very good, and then the way outside, sort of 8+ posts, are really good. This year has not been that case. The 8+ posts have been very good. The 1-2 posts have not been. Had I known that, I would have picked the other dropper, who was the horse that won, at 26-1 and would have been an A. Kind of kicking myself a little bit, but mad congrats to one of the regular On the Wrong Lead presenters, Caleb. He stamped a all expenses paid BC trip. It's a $10,000 entry, plus I think it's hotel and an airfare voucher and everything else yesterday. He did use that 10 horse in the last leg. He came from, I think he was in 15th place or something going into that. Vaulted to first. He won first place in I think it was like a $125 tournament. Won first place by 20 cents, I think. Huge congrats to him. And BCBC is the one tournament I do find interesting, and I may have to go visit him down at Keeneland this year and buy my way in. So let's talk a little bit of... Oh, and I will say about that structure, I think we had the right structure on. I think the Swiss Skydiver fade made some sense, even though she proved that it didn't matter. We were live to a $4 pick 3 that was gonna pay pretty decently. I think worst payout would have been about a 2x return on the cost of the structure. Best outcome for us would have been something like a 24 times return. So I think when you can use a little bit of smart structure in a ticket sequence, in a sequence like that, especially at a place like Saratoga where people are spreading those pick 3s, they're looking to find value, and they're probably making tickets that are a little too big and not enough focused and not enough thought out. Pick 3s can pay pretty darn well. So let's see if we can get another one home in the last 3 legs once again today. So we're going to start in this optional 40 here, and there were 2 horses that really sort of piqued my interest. First, let's start with Fierce Lady, the 2. I think Fierce Lady is going to probably go off as your favorite in this race. Rudy, Rosario, horse has a lot of speed, as a lot of horses do here, and is kind of the logical horse on paper. I have a lot of questions here, though. Probably should have gotten it done versus 2 others that are in here last time out. I don't think the switch to going to the Rudy barn, and it was not a claim, by the way. It was a move to the Rudy barn. Really moves this one up anymore. I think you would have seen it last out. My other thing is Rosario and Rudy, for some reason, are terrible together. They're over 17 in the last year. For such high percentage connections on both sides to be that poor together is just sort of head scratching. And I don't want any of this one. It felt like last time was the time. Kind of gave up the ghost at 6.5 furlongs on a pretty decent rail, because that was second week of the meet. So I just sort of scratched my head at this one, and I want 2 others in here. I want the 6 Bertranda. Horse is, very consistent, after, moving into the new barn, and was actually a pretty decent horse in the Garagillo barn. 7 for 51 lifetime. We're talking a 6-year-old here, but that last race at this level at Saratoga was a very good race. Runs back to that, probably wins once again. There is a lot of speed here, but this one has shown the ability to sit off from a hot pace, which is what happened last time. Arad perfectly, saw the pace set up in front of him, found some cover, and really pounced late. I think that running style is great here. I think there's some of these in here that arguably need the lead, and this is one that can kind of find a little bit of cover and set a real nice trip. And the other horse I want in here is the Works horse. Let me make that appear for everyone, which is Big Q. I think Big Q gets lost in the shuffle in this race, and I really like that. Big Q's another horse that is probably not as fast as some of the other horses in here, and probably doesn't desperately need the lead like some of the other horses in here. Can sit that trip just off, find a little cover. If anything, I would say the track yesterday was playing very fair. We had, and I had mentioned this before, 2 days ago, we had just absolute calamity happen, and I said, don't chase that. The track will come back to normal. And I think yesterday it did come back to normal. I think Big Q makes a ton of sense in here, and this is the horse that, if you're somebody following class, gets a massive class drop. This horse has been banging around in New York state-bred stakes and is dropping down now and catching an optional 40 field. That's a pretty good class drop. Horse is still protected, so it's not like they're looking to lose the horse. I think they're just looking to get a win. 2 for 7 lifetime. Johnny V's up for Garrett Gullo, and Gullo is hasn't had a great meet, but the two of them do very well together. JV doesn't ride a lot of Gullo horses, but I think this one again sits that right trip. I think Johnny V is probably an underrated jock in his in his older years now, and but he can give some pretty crafty rides. And I like the fact of seeing a speed horse drawn outside of all the other speeds. JV can pop the gate, look over, and make a bunch of tactical decisions, and he's somebody I trust to think when he's riding and to sort of throw the plan away and and come up with something on the fly. So I want to just use those two in this race. Again, I am sort of fading Fierce Lady here. May not be the smartest fade I've ever done, but I'll take it in here. And I think my concern here is that they have Fierce Ladies 92 on the morning line. We saw yesterday some really suspect morning lines. I expect this horse to be more like 2-1, quite honestly. I think this horse takes a ton of money in here. With all that speed and the connections and sort of almost getting it done last time. And so I think these lines move around, and I think our 11 on the outside, who's the Works horse, is going to probably drift up, and you're going to get probably more like 8-1 on that one, unless this field really scratches down. So moving on to the 9th, I want 2 horses in here, and I think most people would assume that you're going to single here. Enola Gay makes just a ton of sense in here for Shug, coming off that Appalachian win. She had, there's a lot of other races they could have put her in. They spotted her here in the Saratoga Oaks. They're going for the money. She's stretching out. Her pedigree says she should love the stretch out. All signs say go with Enola Gay, and she just may be too good in here. Speak to Me of Summer is the other one that makes a lot of sense. The issue that obviously, Speak to Me of Summer won the Lake Placid here. She's never really run a bad race. And again, is just a horse that's super, super logical. My concern here is that, and maybe this is me thinking too much, which could be the case, Clement and Rosard, Clement's barn has absolutely disappeared. I don't think he's won a race in 2 weeks or a week and a half. He was, I think, going into yesterday, he was 0 for his last 9, so that means he's like 0 for his last 12 or something starts. I know it was a lot. I'm looking at the stats, and that would make about sense. 0 for 12. That's just really cold, and this happens to Clement every year. He starts attracting a ton of money. His horses get overbet because they're winning, and you can do really good fading people like Mike Maker and Christophe Clement towards the back half of the Saratoga meet. So Enola Gay is much more interesting to me here. The other horse that I want is not Antoinette, but is Rosetta. This one is one of those why are you here horses. Rosetta is a Juddmonte homebred, was running in the UK, was doing very well. They ran third start, was third to, I don't really know how good of a quality G3 that was, but they shipped this one from the UK to the United States in the middle of a pandemic. Must mean that there has to be a reason here. Horse is not getting Lasix, which is the real head scratching point for me, because that would make you think that they bled last out. But horse ships into the Bill Mott barn. Bill Mott was really good with first timers in North America and first timers in his barn. This race is tough, but I think this race could have come up a lot tougher. I don't think this is as deep of a for a $500,000 purse. This race isn't super deep, and I sort of like the fresh face here. So those are going to be my two that I'm going to use in this race. I think Rosetta gets a little lost on the board as well, which I sort of like. And again, it's just sort of that, why are you here? This is a little suspect. JJ gets up, which isn't a normal go-to for Mott. Does ride quite a few Mott horses, but I'm sort of confused, and I'm more comfortable fading some of the other ones in here. If you were on a skinnier budget, smaller ticket, I would just single Enola Gay. But I'm okay I'm okay being too deep here. Another thing I probably should mention with Rosetta, she ran a 94 in time form, and there's a conversion factor of time form to Bayer speed figs. It's minus 18. So if you actually do the math, she ran like a 76, which doesn't get it done in here, but she's definitely improved all three starts, and I think there's every reason for her to move forward again. And also, that's the direct correlation. Sometimes, just due to how races are run in the UK, turf races, obviously turf in the US is run somewhat like European races, but they run very slow early and sprint home late. So just due to the run style, sometimes coming to the US and having a little more pace in front of them will move those numbers up a lot, because the speed figures are taken by the internal fractions do have a play in there. So sometimes you'll see that improvement. So I think people will go, geez, those time form numbers are a little light. I'm not as worried about the time form numbers here. And in the 10th, I want to spread a little here and try to find some prices. So the first two I'm going to have are going to be fairly logical horses. Red Zinger, the 4 here, is sort of an interesting horse. Was in the Gary Contessa barn and was moved out of the Gary Contessa barn. Obviously, Gary Contessa is no longer training horses. Amira has taken over that barn, but obviously the connections didn't want to stay with Amira, or maybe her barn isn't quite to the point where she can handle that many horses, and so Red Zinger moves into the Jeremiah Englehart barn. He hasn't had the best of meets, but this one has that sort of just off the pace sort of stalking style. Again, should be able to find that sort of covered up trip at 6 furlongs. And I think Red Zinger is probably the most likely winner in a race that is fairly open. The other horse that I was sort of interested in, and also works were very, very good on Red Zinger after moving into the new barn. Other horse that I was super interested in here was Dangerous Edge, the 7. Arad stays up here for John Toscano. Toscano has not had the best of meets, but he's a low percentage trainer to begin with, so I find it interesting that Arad decides to ride one of his mounts. And this horse has taken a pretty good drop here. Coming out of that allowance race, and obviously they took a shot at a Saratoga allowance race and didn't run that bad. Getting basically the same trip we're getting today, and should find some easier friends here. A lot of times with horses, it's about finding that competition level, and I think they're getting back here to a level that's probably appropriate for this horse. And Arad has been riding pretty lights out, so it's a horse that I'm comfortable with. More of a closer, so if you're seeing what you're seeing yesterday, I think we've seen earlier on in the meet, the track was not playing as closer friendly, and yesterday we did see some horses coming from out of the clouds, most on the dirt. Most of them were not getting there, but at least they were running well enough to say that, geez, a horse that comes from a little bit farther off the pace does make some sense. The other two horses that I want in here are both a little, well, Southern Bridge is the Bill Mott horse. Again, another one that's taking quite the class drop in here. My issue here is this one just doesn't really like to win. Maybe they're finding the appropriate level here. It's interesting to see that Mott ran this one in 4 consecutive allowance races without running that well. But you're seeing or I shouldn't say not run. Quite honestly, ran up the track in most of those. They tried turf. This to me feels like a bit of a desperation move. This horse may go off as your favorite, but they're just trying to figure out what it takes to get this one a win. Obviously taking a pretty good class drop here, and the cutback. Horse did break its maiden over Saratoga track, but it was sloppy that day, and it is not going to be sloppy here today. So it's a horse that may end up being your favorite, but it's a horse that I think there's enough question marks there. Sort of, they're chasing, they're trying to figure out what's right for this horse. 1-for-9 lifetime. Hasn't really even hit the board that many times, win a place in the show. So I'm making this one a B. The other one in here is that I do like a fair bit is the 5. Sociator, I just think is how you would say that. They have never run this horse on dirt. A synth start and 4 turf starts. So it sort of, again, they obviously. So if you look at this horse, 3 Highland and or more expensive maiden specials at Woodbine. You then have the barn switch. Again, it looks like it was a independent or a move independent. It wasn't claimed to say. And Jeremiah goes right into a Kentucky bred stakes race at Kentucky Downs. That's the deep end of the pool. So with Rosario was up that day, and the horse was. It looks like the horse was eased. That's just the waters were just way too deep. And then they tried to run at this 7 furlong turf race at Belmont. If you look at this horse's pedigree, Central Banker on the top, Alphabet Soup on the bottom. It's a New York bred. The thing is, though, this isn't a New York bred or New York restricted race. There is a bonus for New York breds, but it's not a restricted race. So that makes me think that this horse may be a little. They could have found a restricted race for this horse. They could have found a state bred 40, which would have been much easier company, but they chose to go here. Makes you think that. And also seeing the fact that you have that sort of Kentucky Stakes race, those higher end, more expensive maiden special weights at Woodbine, really makes you think that maybe this one is actually pretty talented and they're finally getting on the right surface. I think the distance is spot on. I think they've been trying to do those 6 furlong, 7 furlong sort of turf races. I think 6 furlong, 7 furlongs in the dirt makes a lot of sense, but I think getting the surface switch here is pretty interesting. Chris Englehart is not known for that surface switch. It's not a big thing for him, and he's only 5% of the meet. So, but again, Rosario goes here. He has ridden the horse before, but very interesting that Rosario is here. I would have thought he would have had better options. And yeah, I just find the horse interesting enough to make a B. And if I could get the right price, that's probably a horse that you feel comfortable putting a win bet on, just on the sort of why are you here. There are a lot of other things, a lot of other places that you could be. So the play will look like this. So that's, again, doing my $100 base bet. It's 611 over 26 over 47 for $8, and 611 over 26 over 47. Or sorry, 611 over 26 over 35 for $4. It's a $96 total play. Obviously, this scales down really easy. You could do it 2 and 1, and it would be whatever 2, 4 to 8. It would be $24 for 2 and 1. It's something that is really, really, I think it's an approachable sequence. I think this is also, this sort of a structure can be very easily stretched into a pick 4 or a pick 5 by adding the first two legs. I will put the plays and the exact amounts I'm doing them for in the description. If you like this content, please like and subscribe. It means a lot to us. And until next time, good luck at the races.